Alright, is it fucking recording this time? Yes.
I don't know. Did you do it right this time?
Yes, look. It looks so much different. I don't know why I looked over there and I saw a couple... Like, I saw waves when we started, and I didn't look back over there.
Yeah. Well, you should have, Mitchell.
This is your fault.
Hey, don't victim blame. I'm the victim here.
So this is...
No victim shaming.
This is episode 5, but this is part 2 of episode 5.
I believe that means this is episode 5.5.
This is episode... Well, 5.1.
5.1?
Yeah. It's just like the next version of 5. So everybody missed about a half an hour of recorded material.
It's true.
Because you fucked the microphone up.
Yeah, because Mitchell wasn't paying attention and didn't know what he was doing. We lost half an hour, but it's really simple. It's not a big deal. Basically, you missed Mitchell and I telling stories. I told a story about how fucked up the landlords in my apartment are. But I also let you guys know I moved into a new house. And Mitchell told us about 8 women who are currently missing and a 13-year-old girl who stabbed a dude and escaped. And we're pondering if there's a connection. You're caught up now.
Yeah, so you actually don't get to hear those stories.
Or unless we want to tell the whole things again. Or should we tell different stories this time?
We're telling different stories.
Okay.
I know they haven't heard it, but I don't want to go through all of that again.
And I don't want to pretend to be spontaneous. Be like, oh, really? Oh, that's interesting.
That's what I mean. When we tell it, it's going to be so regurgitated, basically.
It's going to sound really canned.
You're canned.
And that's the thing about scripted podcasts. It's a lot of the ones that are scripted, it's I can tell you're reading. Even when you're having a conversation and you have an outline, it's very clear that there's a whole thing you're going through, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it would be this. My story was bad enough, so let alone telling it again.
Oh, and I forgot that we also went through the difference between East Cleveland and East Cleveland. They missed that, yeah. Which
we determined is now just the East Side and East Cleveland.
Exactly. Because East Cleveland is apparently a town.
Yeah. I knew that was a town, but then I started thinking about it too much. I'm like, wait, do I just call everything East Cleveland? But then I remembered, oh no, I say East Side.
Yeah. There's the East Side and the West Side.
I probably refer to most of East Cleveland as the East Side.
Although that makes me wonder, if we go back and listen to the Anthony Sowell episodes, are we calling it East Cleveland or the East Side?
I don't know.
I bet we call it East Cleveland.
I'm just going to let it go. Okay, so tell me a new story.
Tell you a new story. Am I prepared for this part? I feel like I'm not.
Do you want me to tell my story? Will you be
able
to think while I'm telling my story, though?
I'll try.
Okay. Well, it's fine if you can't think of one. So, I'm going to tell the story about when we purchased our last car. Did I tell you this story?
Well,
I think I just recently told you this.
I know the story of your current second car.
No, not that story. So, I had a lease on a car for I had a 2-year lease on a car. Well, it was a 3-year lease that I had to end a year early because of mileage. And I got another lease and it was the same situation. So after that one, we were like, oh, let's just buy the next car because we were over in mileage again and we don't want to keep leasing. And we didn't have the money to pay the mileage that was over.
Ugh. And see, that's why I never want to lease a car. Having to fucking keep track of how many miles I've driven and be like, oh, is it okay for me to take this road trip this year?
Well, see, we didn't even do that. It was just kind of well, we know we're going to get there close because we didn't try to mitigate it or anything.
Yeah. So
they were just like, oh yeah, we'll roll over your extra mileage cost into the purchase of the new car. So we're just going in negative. The car's never going to be worth more than we owe on it because of the extra.
Well, that's true
money.
Anyways.
I mean, it is.
Cars are always immediately worth less than they are.
But it's even further now.
Yeah.
They rolled the cost in, but I never got rid of that cost.
Yeah.
So we spend 400 hours at the dealership and it's just eternal. And we had actually found the Kia online that we wanted, and it was a dealer demo or whatever, so it had 5,000 or 6,000 miles on it. And we drove, it was the same model that we had the 2 leases before, and we drove it, it's fine, whatever, blah, blah. And I signed all of the paperwork, all of it is completely done, 100% done and processed. And we go out to the parking lot, and the dealer, or the dude...
Can I just say, as soon as you said out to the parking lot, I got Blondie's Rapture stuck in my head. Out to the parking lot.
Yeah. So we danced our way out to the parking lot.
Where the people meet.
Yeah.
Wait, that's not right. Face to face and cheek to... Anyway, sorry.
And the salesman, or whatever he is, was like just going over stupid car stuff. And
No, I've never purchased a car like that. Or used cars, or car salesman is as bad as I imagine.
no, actually, at least in my experience, the worst part of it was like the financial dude.
Okay.
Who, I don't even have specific examples for it, but the car salesman's kind of just like, yeah, you want to buy this car?
Because the
I'm
whole
gonna try
like
to sell you this car.
haggling, wait, let me go ask my manager. None of that was happening?
I mean, maybe, but I really don't remember now. But I feel like the financial dude was like much more of a douche, like giving you that like, you know, just salesman crap. I hate it all.
Yeah.
But, so we go out and he's like kind of going over last minute crap with the car. And we're just like, whatever. And I was working overnights at the time. And this is like during the day. So I only had like a few hours of sleep. And I like noticed they put these foam things on the car doors so they don't bump other car doors in the parking lot.
Okay.
And where that one was, there was still some residue. And I don't know why I even said anything, but I just casually was like, oh, there's some residue on the thing, probably from where that foam thing was. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll take that to maintenance. They need to clean that off. And I was like, I really don't care. I didn't say it, but I was like, I've been here for 4 hours. I just don't care.
Just give me the car.
We'll get rid of that. And he's like, no, they really need to take care of it. So he got in the driver's seat. Will got in the front
I'm remembering the story now.
passenger seat. I got in, I mean, I probably would have been fine, but I got in behind him, luckily, at least. I was right behind the driver. And we're in the car, and he puts it in reverse, and he just, like, backs up to where the maintenance place is, which is, like, it was a good, like, 40 or 50 yards. He didn't want to, like, drive all the way around the lot, whatever. So as we're, like, backing up...
I'm impressed that you measured it in yards. I don't think I visualize the world in yards.
I do because of marching band, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot easier for me to visualize, probably. I don't know how many feet. Like, I can't visualize feet.
Are there three feet in a yard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so 120 feet. Yeah, that's dumb. Like, that's really dumb.
It's not, because I play Dungeons and Dragons, and like 120 feet is totally like the range of a spell, and I'm used to thinking about things in those kinds of terms.
There. Well, that's 40 yards. So
yeah, that's dumb. I can't picture that.
So as we're...
A spell with a 40-yard radius? That's absurd.
It's a football spell. So as we're backing up, we're going kind of fast.
Okay.
Not like really fast, but we were going faster than I've probably ever driven in reverse. And as we're going back, I wasn't even paying attention and didn't even notice or anything, but we got T-boned from the right side.
Fuck that.
And it was actually, I can't remember the relation now, but the dude that was having he was coming out of the maintenance that hit us. He was like related to somebody at the dealership, like it was another salesman, like nephew or something. And so it just destroyed the driver's side and passenger side door where he hit us on the right side. And I busted out laughing immediately because I was just telling the story to your neighbor. That's what it was. But I busted out laughing immediately because I was just like, I'm not driving. It's not my problem. There's no way that's going to affect me. So after all that, the drama that unfolded, they ended up giving us like a not a rental, but like a thing to drive in the meantime. And they actually ended up finding a new car that was exactly the same. And there's something better about it, but it only had like 3 miles on it for the same exact price. So
nice.
We got like an extra 5,000 or 6,000 miles for the same price.
Heck yeah.
So I mean, it kind of worked out, but it was like
a lot of fucking
it was a
work
nightmare.
To get there.
Like who even does that? Like how does that? Who does that even happen to? Me.
Apparently you.
Yeah.
Apparently it happens to you.
And like the first thing I did, like we got out and like I called my mom immediately and I was like, so I mean she knew we were there and everything, and I was like, so we're at the car lot, and she's like, yeah, and I was like, you're not gonna believe what happened. You're never going to believe this ever. And that was pretty much how I told the story to everybody. I was just like, it's the most. I mean, it's not the craziest thing that could ever happen, but you would never imagine that happening. I'm just glad it wasn't one of us driving, but if it would have been one of us, we wouldn't have been backing up either. So
that's true.
But I think he ended up having to pay like the deductible on the whatever, because the car lot's uninsured, I'm sure. So I think he had to pay like the deductible to get that one fixed or whatever, and then I'm sure they sold that to some sucker too. So, yep.
I like it. So the story that I'm thinking of, because I decided to tell the my landlords or horrible human beings story, and I don't feel like repeating it, it reminded me of the worst roommate I ever had story.
Ooh.
I've told you about this, right?
Yeah, but I remember pieces of it, so this is going to be good.
Okay, cool. So when I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, I lived there from 2003 to 2009.
Is it like saying I live in Birdtown Quid?
Oh, well, yes and no. But I mean, like in Brooklyn, if Brooklyn itself, if Brooklyn were its own city, it would be the second biggest city in America.
Okay.
Just Brooklyn alone is bigger than LA.
Ew.
Yeah, fucking nuts, right? So, referring to neighborhoods within
bigger
Brooklyn,
or more population?
both.
Okay.
I think. Definitely high population. I said that really adamantly as though I
think
knew.
LA is a lot.
You're right. You're right. LA might be bigger geographically.
Yeah.
Brooklyn
But Brooklyn, you have people
is the
on
second
people
most
on people
populated.
vertically.
Yes.
Yeah.
If Brooklyn were its own city, it'd be the second most populated city in America.
Right.
That's what I mean by big. Because actually, the biggest city in America geographically is some fucking city in Alaska that has like a population of like 200.
Well, of course.
So
and the geographical area is like half the size of the state or something.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. But anyways, so I was living in Williamsburg, which I will also say when I first moved to New York, it was 2002, and it was my dream to live in the East Village, but I couldn't afford to live in the East Village. So I did what everybody at that time who couldn't afford to live in the East Village did, and I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, because if you take the L train to the East Village, it's the first stop past the East Village into Brooklyn. And now Williamsburg is such a fucking phenomenon that Williamsburg is actually more expensive now than the East Village. And a one bedroom there is like $4,000 a month. It's absurd.
Gross.
It's gross, yeah. But anyways, so when I first moved there, I had like a 3-bedroom apartment that was $1,800 a month, which would be unheard of now, but it was pretty normal then. And I had 2 roommates, of course, and they were 2 good friends of mine. And then those 2 friends moved out, and then 2 new friends moved in, and then those 2 friends moved out. And then for the first time, I had to start looking for roommates on Craigslist.
By moved out, do you mean you murdered them?
They moved out, Mitchell.
So those are crawl space.
They moved out.
How many crawl spaces were
Anyways, I'm going on with the story.
How many crawl spaces were in your apartment?
So, anyways, I was looking on Craigslist for many things, one of which was a roommate. And
And a new murder weapon.
Oh, Craigslist. For those who don't know, do you know that you can't look for sex on Craigslist anymore?
I'm pretty sure that anybody who... Okay, well, I guess I should say, I'm pretty sure anybody who did use it definitely knows.
Oh, yeah. Anybody who is, like, looking for BJs or more. Because actually, you don't go to Craigslist for BJs. You go to Craigslist when you're looking to, like, be a scat bottom, or if you're looking to, like, wear women's pantyhose and, like jump up and down on a fucking trampoline.
Don't judge me.
I'm just saying, you go to Craigslist for very specific things, and or when you're looking to be a little anonymous in your asking. If you don't want your neighbor to know that you enjoy being a human toilet, then you go to Craigslist and post it anonymously saying human toilet seeking poop.
First of all, how would your neighbor know that? Second of all, I just post that shit to Facebook anyway.
That's true. You guys should see his Facebook account. It's fucking filthy.
It is.
So I find a roommate on Craigslist, totally lovely human being, no big deal. I find another one, lovely human being, no big deal. One moves out. Anyways, so finally one moves in who's a fucking nightmare. And there were so many stories about this guy. And I'm not even sure how long he lived with us, but I don't think more. I think 4 months, like at most.
If you think it was 4, it was like 2.
Probably. It was so bad. But like some quick highlights about how horrible this human being was. The first thing that happened that I was like, was I came home, and I honestly think this is his second day of living in the apartment. I come home, and like, dude is hairy. He's like this hairy fucking dude. And I come home, and he's shaving his back with clippers in the living room. And,
like over his shoulder?
Yeah. We had a big mirror in the living room, and he's just standing there in front of that mirror, like clippering his shoulders and his back. And already I'm just like, ew. I mean, for the record, I fucking love... I'm one of those weirdos. I think back hair is sexy. I think shoulder hair is sexy. I think like a natural, like furry fucking shoulder pad is a good fucking look.
Shoulder pad?
Yes! Like a nice little fuzzy shoulder pad that you can just kind of like nuzzle your little face into. I love that.
Blech.
I love it. But anyways, this was gross. I don't want to see him fucking clippering that fucking back hair in my living room. And when he's done, he walks into his bedroom and has just left a fucking huge pile of body hair on the living room floor.
You should have glued it into like a beard for yourself, or glued it onto your back.
Oh, I do not want his body hair.
Glue it onto your back and then walk up to him and be like, "Hey, did you forget something?"
Well, I did knock on his door and say, "Hey, did you forget something?" And I was like, "Hey, are you gonna sweep this up?" And he looks at me. He's like, "Oh, I guess."
Even if he would have left it in the bathroom, it would have at least been like 1 point higher on like on a negative 100-point scale.
Well, because really there are two violations here. Violation 1 is that you did it in the living room.
Right, that's
and
what
violation
I mean.
2 is that you didn't sweep it up.
Right. Like if it were in the bathroom and contained, it would have at least been like, ew.
Sure.
But then it's just like double.
It would have been 1 felony instead of 2.
You're under arrest for it.
So that's first example. Second example of how shitty of a human being he is one day, so our pilot light, when you turn the stove on, the gas would come out. It'd make that click, 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 click noise, and gas was coming out, but the pilot light wouldn't light. So you had to use a lighter to actually get the flame going. And one day I come home and he is passed out drunk on the living room sofa.
Wait, was it daytime or nighttime?
Daytime.
Okay.
I'm like coming home from work. It's like 6 p.m.
That's plus 10 to the story. Okay.
Yes. He's like passed out drunk on the living room sofa and the entire apartment is full of gas.
Ooh. That's how buildings explode all the time.
I know! So, and I look on the stove.
Isn't that
and
what happens in... What movie does it happen? Oh, that's Fight Club.
Oh. I haven't seen this since the 90s.
Oh. Ew.
So, and on the stove is a pot of cold water with a packet of ramen just floating in it. So the story's clear.
Even best case scenario,
it would
have just burned like eventually.
Exactly, but instead he never lit the pilot light, so the apartment's just filling with gas while his like cold ramen is soaking and he's passed out. So I turn off the stove and I like wake him up, like shaking him awake, and I'm fucking furious. And I'm like, dude, like you feel like you left the gas running and the apartment's like full of gas. He told me I was lying and that I was making the whole thing up and that I didn't know what I was talking about, and then went into his bedroom.
He's like, "You're lying," and pulls out a cigarette, and it's like, boom!
Oh, we definitely smoked in that apartment, too. And then the third and final part I'll tell you before I get to, like, the worst part, was that there was also this moment where he knocks on my door one day. And actually, I think this was chronologically before the ramen gas incident. But he knocks on my door and is like, "Hey, Jeff, so I just want to let you know that the company I work for, I had to make a lot of long distance calls for them." He like worked in fashion. I had to make a lot of long distance calls.
I don't know why that was so funny.
Well, it's fitting, right?
I work in fashion.
Of course, he fucking works in fashion.
Of course, I work in fashion.
And I will say,
and I had to call France.
And I would normally,
Paris.
I would normally preface this with no offense if you work in the fashion industry, but I'm not going to, because my experience in New York tells me everybody who works in fashion is a horrible human being. It is like 100% across the line. There's no exceptions to that.
I'll give you that. I've seen Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah. So imagine people like that, but also that level of entitlement, but with nothing to support it.
Right. Like it's not like you're Meryl. You're actually Meryl Streep's character. You're
absolutely, because Meryl Streep is basically Anna Wintour, who like actually has like a real, like she shouldn't be an awful human being, but at least she has like the cred to back that shit up.
Right. At least you can. I wouldn't even say justify, but at least you can be like, "Oh, well, she's got something."
Totally. You're not just this fucking asshole. So he's like, "Yeah, I had to rack up a bunch of long distance phone calls because of my job." And, Indy's barking. Okay, that was really cute. So Indy started barking and Mitchell just went full on West Virginia. It was like, "Indy, get.
Did I say get?
You totally did. That was hilarious.
Can't prove it.
Actually, we literally can.
Yeah, but guess who edits this?
So anyways, I was, so he asked me if he can borrow my phone because he had so much international long distance racked up that he couldn't afford to pay his phone bill, but that his job is going to pay him back. And he just needs to borrow my phone for just like a couple of minutes to make a phone call. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." So I hand him my phone, and at this point, I used to love hanging out in the living room. At this point, I fucking hate leaving my home so much that I never leave my bedroom. So as soon as I say sure, I hand it to him through the bedroom door. I close my bedroom door. Not like a minute later, I hear the front door of the apartment close. He fucking left he left my apartment with my phone.
He's like, bye, bitch.
Yeah. So I run out of the apartment, run down the stairs. I'm like, Dominic.
Is this like a flip phone?
This was 2006. So it had to have been.
Yeah.
It had to have been. Yeah, it definitely was.
I don't know why that's funnier, but it is.
Well, what's also funny is I remember it was the same phone that Jude Law had at that time, because I saw a photo of Jude Law with his cell phone. I'm like, ooh, that's my cell phone.
Ooh, and you're like, I live in New York. I have Jude Law's cell phone.
So, but what's funny is when I get my phone back from him, I talk to my other roommate, who's not a crazy person, who's a very reasonable, sweet human being who worked in theater, because I will also say that across the board, 100% of people who work in theater are lovely human beings.
What about actors? That's theater.
Oh, no, actors are horrible.
That's working in theater.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I need to rephrase that.
Working in theater minus actor.
Yeah, exactly. Jeff Goad stereotypes the world.
Yes.
So I'm telling my other roommate about this, and he's like, Jeff, the same thing happened to me, except when he asked to borrow my phone, he told me the reason he didn't have a phone anymore was because he was gay bashed by the cops, and the cops broke his phone.
That's weird.
That's weird.
Why would you go to that level of...
It's a weird
Why
fucking
don't you just
lie.
be like, I dropped my phone and broke it?
Totally.
That's so much easier.
Or like, I lost it. Three words.
That's even easier, yeah.
3 words. I lost it.
Yeah. Because that also passes the test of usually when people lie, they give way too much detail.
Yeah.
Like that.
Like gay bashed by the police, right, or international long distance.
But that's way too... The gay bashing by police is way too much detail. But even like, I dropped it and broke it, now that I think about it, if I legitimately dropped and broke my phone, I wouldn't tell you I dropped and broke my phone. I would just say I broke it.
Yeah. That's true. You wouldn't need to add it. I dropped.
I lost it would pass.
Yeah.
Because if you were lying, you would be like, oh, I was at this place and I left it. And you would come up with some whole thing.
And then Donna Summer came by, and I was like, Donna, have you seen my phone? And she was like, oh, Dominic, honey, no. I know that you're a fashion icon, but no, I've not seen your phone.
Yeah, like when I lost my phone at Cedar Point, and the only detail I gave was just like, yeah, I lost it on a ride at Cedar Point.
Yeah.
And like, if I were going to lie and make it up, I'd be like, oh, I was on this ride. And
but I think losing it on the ride though, like losing it on the ride is a fun detail. So like that you have to include.
I guess, but I didn't though. Like I was just like, oh, I was on a ride at Cedar Point and it fell out of my pocket. And like I feel like if I were going to lie about it, I would be way more detailed probably.
That's true. Good point. So the final part of this epic 4-part tale is that eventually, I told Dominic that he just needed to fucking move out of this apartment. I think that's right. Because I think this was shortly after the gas incident. I'm just like, no, like you cannot live here any longer.
You're going to kill us. You're stealing our phones.
Exactly.
You don't know how to make ramen.
So I was like, you need to move out. And he was like, well, actually, technically you can't make me leave.
Actually, you need to move out.
I know New York law. And you actually...
Oh, he pulled a U.
Well,
they missed the story.
They missed that story, yeah. So, sorry, listeners. Inside joke. Because it's in the last 30-minute episode, I did say to the landlord that I know Ohio law. But anyways, But I was like, all right, well, you might be right. You might know New York law, and perhaps you are correct. However, if you don't leave, I'm going to make your fucking life hell until you do. And then finally, like within a week, he agreed to move out. And I'm like 24 at the time, so I will acknowledge that I was still pretty passive aggressive in a lot of ways I handled things. So he had given us a deposit and wanted his deposit back in cash. And if that's fucking shady. So I'm like, if I'm going to give it back to you in cash, I need you to sign something stating that you received it, which I think is totally legit.
Well, you should sign something regardless of the form.
You should.
Well, I mean, I guess if there's a check, there's a paper trail. But,
exactly.
But still, I would.
But with cash,
regardless, you should sign.
All
something.
I can prove is that I took out $400 in cash or whatever. His
right,
deposit
you
was.
can't. Yeah.
But in the contract, I also wrote in, like, I also understand that I no longer live at this address and I am not to return. I included a lot of, like, passive-aggressive shit that did not need to be in there.
I shaved my back hair in the living room.
I am a horrible human being. I apologize for my very existence.
I love ramen.
I was definitely drunk and passed out,
by
filling the
6
apartment with gas by 6 p.m. So he signed it. and moved all of his stuff out. The movers came, emptied out the apartment. He comes back upstairs and is doing one final look through just to make sure he didn't forget anything, which totally normal.
Oh, God. I just now remembered this.
Yes.
Okay.
And then he's like, do you mind if I look at that contract one last time? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I hand it to him. And as soon as I hand it to him, he shoves it in his mouth and starts chewing on it as he starts running towards the door. At which point I jump onto his back. I'm punching him in the back of the head while I'm ripping out the contract from his mouth.
Like a dog. What do you have?
Yes. And this is literally the only time in my adulthood I have ever engaged in a physical altercation where I wasn't jumped and beaten by 3 guys. That happened. That's another story.
Next week.
Next week, sure. But this was the only fight that I played an active role in as an adult. And he tears out of the apartment while I'm on him, punching on his back of his head and pulling out the paper, and runs down the stairs. And ultimately I got half of his swallowed, chewed up contract.
So as ridiculous as that is, I've got to say that that's amazing on his part though, because that's my fantasy, just last ditch effort is to, when there's a problem, just eat it and run. There's just, maybe that should be the tagline. Just eat it and run. Because what else can you do? Swallow it and just run.
Wait, could that be our closing for the episode? You can say eat it and run. I'll say deny, deny, deny.
Well, we've got.
Oh, we have one for this.
We do have a special.
Okay, we'll save it for the end.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my story. You've told a story, I guess, and really we only missed about a minute of the Michael Madison stuff.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that, so.
Yeah, so this is going to be mostly fresh and new.
Yes, so you ready to talk about Michael Madison?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, so Michael Madison, he was 35 years old. He was arrested on July 19th.
Is this Michael Madison, PhD?
Yes. No. So he was arrested on July 19th, 2013, when police responded to a call about a terrible smell coming from a garage that was leased to him because he lived in an apartment. I guess there was a garage that wasn't technically his or whatever.
Okay. This is already smelling like the Anthony Sowell story.
Exactly. So inside the garage, when they go in, the police officer finds between a car that was in there and the wall, he found a decomposing body.
Just laying there on the floor?
Well, no, so it was wrapped. All of them were wrapped in plastic.
Oh!
All of them, well, it was garbage bags.
But still, listeners, you don't know what a Twin Peaks fan I am. And there's a great photo of me wrapped in plastic at the location.
We should post that on Instagram.
That Laura Palmer washed up. And I am going to post that on our Instagram when we release this episode.
Okay. But I think, not that I think, but these were definitely garbage bags, so I assume they were black. And there was
it's still plastic. They're wrapped in plastic.
There were 6 layers on this one or something. Okay. At least, I don't know if all of them, but at least this one that they found.
Okay, so they found a decomposing woman wrapped in garbage bags.
Yeah, there was a quote from the police officer. He was even good God or something when he found it. It's very movie level reaction.
Which is also what they said when they found Laura.
Did they?
I think he said, good God, it's Laura.
Maybe I'm talking about Twin Peaks. No, but that did happen.
Wait, is Michael Madison just Bob?
Maybe. You just spoiled things.
Sorry.
Okay, so they found that body. The next day, a body was found in the backyard, and there was another one in a basement of an empty house that was 100 or within a couple hundred yards of the house. Yards. Is that wait, did we talk about yards in this recording?
Oh my God, I don't think so. Or did we?
Oh no, it was this one because we talked about the car thing. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my God, there are too many parallel levels of reality going on. Which, if you watch the new Twin Peaks, that's also very Twin Peaks.
Okay.
Which you have not watched yet.
No.
We need to get on that.
We'll see.
Mitchell. No. We will watch it.
So eventually he was arrested after a 2-hour standoff with the police.
Hold on. So they found the one body in the garage. Why did it take them a whole nother day to find the body in the backyard?
I don't know. I don't have all this information.
But, okay.
So after there was a 2-hour standoff with the police at his mother's house in Cleveland, and they finally arrested him, but it said without incident. So I'm wondering what this standoff is like. Like, if you have a 2-hour... Did I say? Yeah. 2-hour standoff with police... How is that without... Like, are you just like,
well,
no?
I guess he finally just walked out.
Like, no.
I think that means without, like, firing at the mother's house.
I guess, but for
like...
what are you doing for 2 hours that doesn't result in anything? Like, you're just like, I don't really want to come out.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
I know what without incident means, but I just don't understand how for 2 hours, like nothing happened for 2 hours.
Yeah, it's like, no.
Like, they were just like, no.
Nobody's home.
Right.
Wrong address.
So we'll go. That's the end result of the story. So we'll do some backstory a little bit. In October.
Oh, that's not the whole story.
Yeah, that's it. We're done.
Okay.
Just cut it right here. That's it. See you next week. So in October 2001, Michael Madison dragged an 18-year-old woman down an East Cleveland street, threw her behind a house, and was going to rape her, or started to rape her, or began to. But just within minutes of all that happening, apparently, coincidentally, a police officer pulled up, and Madison ran, and the officers chased him down and later arrested him, or whatever. He pleaded guilty to attempted rape, and he was sentenced 4 years in prison.
Okay, so
like most serial killers, he has something going on. Whether it's like a crime that he served time for, or like just he used to kill animals, or he's got something going on.
And also, I know that the only thing I know about this is that he was inspired by Anthony Sowell. And it's fascinating that this part happened before the Anthony Sowell murders, but him and Anthony Sowell both had in common that they were arrested for rape.
Right.
Prior to their murder sprees.
Right. And I don't even know if I would say like he was inspired by him, but I do feel like there's like this red dragon, like Hannibal and the Tooth Fairy thing going on.
I haven't seen Red Dragon, so I don't get the reference.
Oh my God. We're going to pause the recording. Wait, not Hannibal, but yeah, we're going to go watch Red Dragon.
Yeah, I've only watched Silence of the Lambs. I haven't watched any of the other Hannibal the Cannibal, the musical movies.
Well, so basically, it's a aspiring thing where he's like, oh yeah, it's probably what you think it is, but yeah.
Is this the second movie or the third?
Chronologically, it's the first.
No.
But
I mean
as they were released, it's the third, yeah.
Third, okay.
It's the prequel to Silence of the Lambs.
Okay, even though all the actors are like 30 years older.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Anthony Hopkins pulls it off really well.
Okay.
And obviously I'm going to tell you that. But he really does. We'll have to watch it. Okay, so he spent 4 years in prison. Before he got out of prison, he was ordered to undergo treatment for sex offenders. And after he completed the treatment, he returned to East Cleveland.
What a wimp. Anthony Sowell refused to do that.
Did he?
Yeah.
I don't remember that part.
Oh, you remember that part of the story?
No.
Because in prison...
How can you refuse to... Oh, I guess if you're already in prison, they can't really tell you.
Yeah, and he could have potentially had a reduced sentence if he had engaged in it, but he refused to because he didn't see himself as having a problem.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Well, I mean, it doesn't make... You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
In his case, I see why he would say that.
Exactly.
So he returned to East Cleveland, and even though he was a sex offender, he actually listed his home address with Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department as his mother's address in Cleveland.
Okay. But that's not where he was living.
No. Not at the apartment where he actually lived. So now we get into... Obviously, now that he's committed a crime, we know that he commits more similar crimes. What do you... I have a question for you, since you asked me questions a couple episodes ago. What do you think that the rearrest rates are in Ohio for sex offenders after a conviction? So, like, if a sex offender gets convicted of a, like, sex crime or sex-related crime, what do you think their rearrest rate percentage is?
I think it's really unfair that you're putting me on the spot like that. Okay, so they're arrested for a sex crime. They're released. What percentage of them are arrested again?
For a sex crime.
For a sex crime. So the sexual recidivism rate.
Yes.
I would guess 73.
73%?
Yes.
So the Plain Dealer article that I found from July of 2013 says that the Ohio, at least at that time, the Ohio average for rearrest for sex crimes was 8%.
Wow. Good for you, sex offenders.
Well, and also that I mean, the only reason I put that in there really was because I do have that weird feeling of like, for a lot of things, like if somebody murders somebody, are you going to rehabilitate them?
I will say
that's my whole...
That makes me feel a lot better though, because do you remember in the Anthony Sowell episode when he was released from jail, specifically he had undergone psychological treatment and the therapist released him saying that he was in a low risk category for sexual recidivism.
So it makes sense.
It does. If only 8% of people go back into the prison system after that, that's actually kind of a reasonable potential assessment.
But see, I also see the other side of that because I'm like, well, if the rearrest rate for murder is like 95% or whatever, I don't even know if you can calculate that because who gets out after murder anyway?
Yeah.
But like, even if that's like 95% rate.
I doubt it's 95%.
No, but I'm just saying, like, it's more than 8.
I don't know, because I feel like, and maybe we're going off topic here, but I feel like the vast majority of people who commit murders are not serial killers. They are people who let a situation go too far.
Okay, well, regardless, maybe not murders, whatever. I feel like the rearrest rate for basically any other crime is higher than 8%.
Yeah.
But I see the other side of that to where if it's that low of a percentage, you can probably be rehabilitated.
Yes.
Where if it's like a large percentage, it's just kind of like, not that you don't want to try, but what can you do to a degree?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, well, that's not necessarily a red flag, which is also like kind of like the Anthony Sowell thing. Like it makes sense now knowing that it's only 8% that they were just kind of like, well, so less than a 1 in 10 chance that something's going to happen.
Well, and that also makes sense to me too, because as like a career criminal, somebody who, makes your living dealing drugs, breaking into homes, mugging people, things like that. I think one of the really difficult parts of rehabilitating yourself from that is you see how easy it is to get money.
Right.
And you see how good your life is when you're doing that. I don't think most sex offenders see themselves as having had a good life as an active sex offender.
Right. I mean, because that's like a lot of, there's a lot of baggage. I mean, I hate this, like, I'm not defending them, but there's a lot of baggage that comes with being a sex offender. Like, it really gives you just like a permanent mark on every aspect of your life.
And unless your sexual proclivity, like your pedophilia or whatever, or your desire to rape people, unless it is coupled with some level of sociopathy, I also think you realize how fucked up what you're doing is, and you want to not be the kind of person who does those things.
Right. Like, it's the same thing where, like, you can get labeled and put on a list as a sex offender for, like, peeing in public, or, like, having sex with somebody who's 17.
Or being a 19-year-old who's in possession of your own dick pics from 3 years ago.
Right, exactly. And that's, at that point, it's kind of like,
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So, along that note, the national average for rearrests for sex offenders is 12. So we're not really, we're pretty on par. It's not that big of a thing for rearrest with sex offenders.
No, we're like 33% less. That's impressive.
Yeah. So, and experts say that apparently the most effective treatment is something that involves into a process and not like a little seminar that you went to while you were in jail. Of like, this is what you don't do for like 2 hours.
You need continued support and community.
And that's with anything in life. That's rehab or whatever.
And I think it makes sense. You put a bunch of guys in the same room who are struggling with the exact same thing, who want to get better, and they're going to have some sense of community around that, and they're going to be able to help each other get better, which is like why like shit like AA works so well for a lot of people.
Right.
Not for everyone, but for a lot of people, is that you find community with people who are dealing with similar things, and you don't feel like you're the worst human being on the planet. Although
in this
sex
case,
offenders,
it's 50-50.
Some of them kind of are.
Because there's the bullshit stuff, and then there's the shit that's like, that's not good.
And I don't recall if I've said this on the show or not, or if I only have said this in real life, but like I know for a fact, or I know pretty reasonably well that if my desire to sexually harm a child was as strong as my desire is to have sex with men, I probably wouldn't have made it to the age of 38 without having done that.
Right.
Which is very upsetting to think about.
True. Anyway.
So
we've got the 3 victims that are, and everything, when I say the 3 victims, there's always like those articles that at the end or even in the middle, wherever in the article, that always say, oh, Michael Madison and the 3 women that he killed, or more. So it's one of those situations where maybe it was more, because obviously he's not going to say, and he's definitely not going to say now.
Oh, sure.
But I don't know if there were more or whatever.
And that's, I think, almost always the case with these killers. Like, who fucking knows? Like, with Anthony Sowell, we know 11, but, like, he didn't tell us a fucking thing about anything.
I mean, 3 is pretty, like, it's, especially when there's the 3 and they were right there. But I guess with Anthony, there were the 11 and they were right there.
Yeah, so that's the thing with both Anthony and Michael, is that...
They were all right there, though.
Exactly.
So I feel like...
That's the number of bodies they found.
But I feel like if there were, maybe not in Michael's case, but if there were 11 there, that's a lot in one place.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't feel like you would have gone to any trouble to put any more anywhere else if there were 11 there. But also, I do see, if there were 11 there could have been who knows how many somewhere else.
Totally. Because who's to say that he only killed people in his home?
Right.
He could have easily have killed people down by the river or over in the next town.
Yeah, I can see it both ways, yeah.
Yeah.
So the 3 victims, in chronological order, we have 28-year-old Shatisha Sheely. She was reported missing since September 2012. She was found in a weeded lot 2 houses from his apartment.
Okay. Oh, so it wasn't even in an abandoned home. It was just in an empty lot.
Yeah. We'll need to find out where this is. We can go see.
Do you know, did he kill her in the lot or did he dump the body in the lot?
I don't know.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was ever determined.
Okay.
Because there wasn't really a lot of detail about them because there's not anything to go off of and he didn't talk about it. I mean, we don't have like survivors and we don't have, it's just kind of like, well, that's where she was found and he's not going to tell us.
Yeah. She's dead and here's where she was.
Yeah. So
that's
then
terrible.
Almost a year later, 38-year-old Angela Deskins, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Cleveland, she was reported missing in June 2013. She was discovered in the basement. She was the one that was in the basement of a vacant house near his home.
Okay.
And that's like a whole another level of like, you have to break and enter and put a body in there and hope somebody doesn't find it.
Wait, I'm sorry. There were 3, right?
Yeah.
I thought you said there was somebody behind the car.
Yeah, that's the 3rd one.
Somebody in his backyard and somebody in an abandoned house.
I don't think I said backyard.
Oh, maybe the one that I thought you said was the backyard was the one in the abandoned lot.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense. Because remember, I was like, why would it take them a whole nother day to find the body in the backyard?
Yeah, it just says, I don't know what I said, but what I have written is the next day a body was found in a backyard and another.
In a backyard.
Yeah. I don't know what I said. But
okay, you probably just said a backyard.
maybe.
And I was like, how did it take him that long to find him in his backyard?
Right.
Okay, anyways, yes.
So the 3rd one was 18-year-old Sherelda Terry. She was last seen on July 10th, 2013. She was leaving an elementary school. She had a summer job there.
Okay.
And she was the one that was found in the garage.
Okay. So she was 18. How old were the other 2 again?
Angela was 38 and Shatisha was 28.
Okay.
So we're kind of...
that's 38, 28, 18.
It's a generational gap, more arguably.
Did you say the 3rd one was 18?
Yeah, 18, 28, and 38.
Oh, fascinating.
So it's like, it's a generation gap between the youngest and the oldest.
Yeah, I mean, she could have been her mother.
Right. So this is where we're going to end the discussion that we had earlier off recording. But so 2 of the victims, what I assume are Sherelda and Angela, have found to have been strangled with something like rope or cord. And Shatisha was ruled as just homicidal violence by unspecified means. That's all in quotes. So when I read 2 or 3 articles, and one of them said that, I feel like one of them said that Angela was the one that was undetermined, and Sherelda and Shatisha were the ones that were strangled. But then the other one I read was the other way. It was this whole thing of where like multiple articles saying multiple things, but I think the first article was before the bodies were identified, because they actually weren't identified until I think on the 21st, because there was an article I found on the 21st that said they hadn't been identified yet, and then there's an article on the 22nd that was like, oh, here's who the victims were and everything. So it was sometime on the 21st, probably, I would assume.
Yeah, I also when I was researching the Anthony Sowell story, I also came across a lot of conflicting information as well, and oftentimes when I would encounter that, I would find that the things that had conflicting information were often news items from really early on in the story. And I just think that they publish stuff without actually having all of the
Yeah,
information yet. So more often than not, I would just use whatever I saw in a later article, or especially whatever information was like in a documentary later, because I figured the documentary probably did more research.
Oh, yeah. Well, and by that time, yes.
Yeah. Or if I ever saw a family member say something, then that absolutely won out over anything.
That solidifies it, yeah.
Oh, and actually, that can we go on a tangent real quick about the name pronunciations?
Yeah.
So the same friend from the Anthony Sowell case who used to play on that street as a kid, it was funny, he messaged me and was like, Jeff, I need to give you a lesson on how to pronounce black girl names. It's not Talisha, it's Talisha. And what's really funny is when I saw Talisha's name, I also assumed it was pronounced Talisha. But the reason I pronounced her name Talisha in the episode is that's how her family pronounces it in the documentary.
And you're like, yeah, tell her family that.
Exactly. So, because I actually remember like specifically writing down Talisha, capital, and I spelled it out capital Lay, even though that's not how she spells her name. I spelled that out in my notes to make sure that I pronounced it correctly.
And it's really funny that you say that because I did watch, I mean, I guess I can just talk about it now. There's no reason to not talk about it. So they're on YouTube. If you search Michael Madison sentencing, you can watch the entire hour and a half of his sentencing.
Did you?
I watched a lot of it.
Oh.
And watched all of it. And they pronounced their names. And I didn't like write out phonetic, but I did think of you because you had told me that before. And I was like, but Sherelda, both Sherelda and Shatisha are pretty phonetical. Okay. But they did say that their families did say those. And the judge said them. So I'm like, if the judge says that it's Shatisha.
Yeah.
And Sherelda, it's gotta be right.
There's a very good chance that you're saying it the correct way.
Right. So, long story short, the latest article said that it was Sherelda and Angela that were strangled. And so also as just kind of a side note, when the bodies were found, this is a quote from the judge actually, but I think it was true for all of them. When the bodies were found, they were in the garbage bags, like multiple layers, many layers of garbage bags. They were found folded in half to where, quote, their feet were by their ears.
Oh, weird.
So I guess you get more width than you would length in a big garbage bag.
And here's where I
can't imagine, like, thinking about, obviously it's not that easy to like fold yourself over in half that way. So
also, I just wanted to let the listeners know that you literally tried to fold yourself in half in real life, and that was really cute.
But like, so you can't do that very easily. So it's like horrifying.
You can't
to think of forcing a body to fold that way.
And this is where I get, because I have a very kind of literalist brain. Now, I know that I can't fold in half because my hamstrings aren't flexible enough to do that.
So things are going to be, I can't even.
So does that mean, I guess that just means that like you're just like tearing muscles when you're doing it. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, I guess at that point, doing something crappy to a dead body is much less worse than killing somebody, so.
I guess. Oh, God. So the neighbor who had tipped off the police about the foul smell in the garage said that he knew Madison. I mean, I don't know to what level he knew him or anything, but he said one time they argued over like Michael blocking a driveway or something, and he said, from what I know, he was an okay person when I first met him, and then from there, he had a lot of conflicts with different girls that he knew. When he's real upset with someone, he gets loud. You could hear him like 2 blocks away. And after my conflict with him, I always watched him and I never turned my back because you never know. So it's like one of those situations where it's like, I feel like more than 9 times out of 10, but 9 times out of 10, like somebody pisses you off or you have an argument with somebody and you're like, oh, I'm going to watch that dude. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, whatever. But this is like a situation where he's like, no, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Something is wrong. And he knew like the whole time that, I don't think he obviously knew what was going to happen, but just something wasn't great about him in general.
Do we know like what fucking Michael Madison's deal was? Like was he like abused and molested as a kid? Like, do we fucking know any of this stuff? Or was he just like...
Not from what I know he had like some kind of previous charges to like the rape thing mentioned, like something with some kind of drug charges and something else. I do remember reading a couple things about him being younger, but nothing out of the ordinary if he was abused. I don't remember anything being like you know,
Okay.
wasn't dropped on my head. I didn't have head trauma. I know head trauma is a big thing too.
Yeah, head trauma, bedwetting, arson, pet torture.
Right. Also, I have a bonus fact here. When he was like locked up initially, he was confined in the same lockup that Ariel Castro was.
Oh.
Yeah.
So no, I've
So that's
heard...
like we have a three-way. We have to figure out, not only do we have to figure out how to tie all of our subjects into Cleveland, but now we have to figure out how to tie all of our stories together as we go.
Every single one?
Yes. So like when we get to episode 100, we're going to have this big, long chain.
Where we connect 100.
It's like 6 degrees
stories.
of Kevin Bacon, but it's like 1 degree of Cleveland podcast stories.
Well, and we know that I'm 1 degree or 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon. I don't know how that works.
Have you been in a movie with him?
No, I guess I'm 2 degrees.
Then were you in a movie with somebody that was?
Yes.
I think that's only 1 though.
Then I think I am 1 degree.
Because I think if you're in a movie, there's no degree.
There's no degree.
Right.
Or is there just no degree if you are Kevin Bacon, and it's 1 degree if you're in the movie with him?
I don't know. Somebody will tell us.
Yes. But yes, I was in a movie.
Somebody will tell me, like, I'm not even fucking kidding. Whenever we release this episode, either one of my friends at work,
yes,
or Melissa,
we will have 4 or 5 people DM us directly
immediately, like
to
an
let us
hour
know.
after this episode comes out. They will tell us.
Or in the middle of them listening to it, they'll be like, "Oh, that's 1 degree."
No, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Because I was in a movie with John Lithgow,
right,
and he was in Flashdance, Footloose.
Nope, we're totally leaving that.
He was in Flashdance. What a feeling!
Oh my God. At least you corrected that right away, so they didn't have time to type.
Footloose, yeah. Jeff. Footloose.
Oh my God. Okay, so during one of the police interviews that they did with Michael Madison, he had talked about Sowell, and Mayor Norton said that Madison idolized and was influenced by Anthony Sowell. And I couldn't really find too much more than that. I know that like a couple episodes ago I had talked about how he was like obsessed or whatever. But I couldn't really find like any concrete proof.
Yeah, and that's the narrative everybody tells.
But he did. There was like some kind of something with him referring to Sowell at some point. I couldn't find a quote from him, like himself.
Because I forget who told me, but somebody was saying that like he used to watch footage of the Sowell murder, of the Sowell trials.
I think it was me.
Cry.
Yeah, I think I said that on the recording.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember where I read that, and I couldn't find it again, and I searched a couple things. But,
okay.
So we're just gonna go with it, I guess.
Okay. It's a fact now.
Yeah, we're creating facts. We create facts in this podcast. And also, Mayor Norton says he believes the killings happened over a 10-day period.
Okay.
Which doesn't line up with the disappearance timings, because that would involve like a whole kidnapping and imprisonment scenario, because there was a lot of time in between. Sherelda went missing in July of 2013. Angela went missing in June of 2013. And Shatisha went missing in September of 2012.
Is that when they went missing, or is that when they were reported missing?
That's when they were reported, but regardless, I don't think that somebody is going to not report the 18-year-old that has a job at an elementary school missing almost a year later.
Okay, that's fair.
I not to say anything about Angela at all, but I mean, I don't feel like, from what I've seen from the sentencing and everything, I don't feel like any of these women, as opposed to Anthony Sowell, would have not been reported for like months at a time. Worst case scenario, even if it was a month, we're missing. A month is a lot longer than 10 days.
Yeah. Now, we know how Sowell got his victims. How did Michael Madison get his? Do we know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't find that. So somebody's going to be pissed at that. But but I mean, we do know that Sherelda went missing like on her way home from work at the elementary school.
Okay. So he's just like nabbing them.
Yeah. That's what I would assume. And that's what we're going to create that fact.
Okay. He's nabbing them in plastic bags.
Yeah. So on May 5th, 2016,
okay,
which is 3 years later, I think the trial began somewhere earlier than 2016, but you know how shit goes. It's 3 years later. He was found guilty of all of the charges, which was 2 counts for each of the women of aggravated murder, 3 counts of kidnapping.
Wait. Why does he get 2 counts of murder for each woman?
I don't know.
You can't murder the same woman twice.
I don't know, but that's what the charges added up to.
How does that
in
work?
Both places I saw, because there was another situation where articles are saying there were 13 charges or there were 14 charges, which is like a 1 difference, and that would be like a 3 difference.
Okay.
I don't know, we can look that up later.
Yeah, you can't murder the same woman twice.
Somebody will message us, it's fine. Somebody figure that out and tell us. So that's 6 total for that.
Oh, and for the record, somebody who listens to it in the next month, if you're listening to this a year from now, you don't need to message us and tell us.
God,
we already know.
Yeah, what is today?
By that
Today
point,
is August 20th, 2018.
Yes.
If it is, I don't even know when this.
If it's past October 1st,
if it's
we
if it's a
know
week from now, don't bother. Okay, so there were those. That's 6 charges.
Okay.
There were 3 counts of kidnapping, 1 for each.
Yeah,
that's 9.
That makes sense.
3 counts of gross abuse of a corpse.
Okay, fully understood. Yep.
1 count of rape. Okay. So I think they only maybe prove that one of them had been raped, which I would assume that all 3 of them had.
Sure.
And then 1 count of a weapons possession by an ex-convict.
Okay.
So that's 14. I don't know where one article said 13, one said 14, whatever. So this is where we get into the shit that when we're done recording this, we're going to watch. During the sentencing on June 2nd, Sherelda's father, his name is Van.
I told you.
I know, but you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
So
wait, can I tell the viewers what I know?
Well, tell them after.
Okay.
So Sherelda's father, Van, Terry, said he was, and you can watch this. I watched, because the sentencing is on YouTube, the whole thing. It's unedited. And there are like multiple news clips where you can watch this happening, but watching it happen organically is way better than the news clips because they just like show this happening. So he's like standing there and he's like talking to the judge and everything, or making a statement. He's like, I guess we're supposed to forgive him for taking my child. Like, more or less, he says that. And he turns around, and you can't see this on camera, but he turns around and he looks at Michael Madison for like a few seconds. And even though you can't see this, he talked about it later, Michael smiled at him and just stared at him.
Oh my God.
And that's when Van just takes off and jumps across the table. And he never gets a hold of him, but like he jumps. I mean, it's not like, it's like movie level of what you would imagine somebody in a courtroom turning around and just jumping across like the defendant's table. And shit goes crazy.
I'm
like
sure.
People are screaming. The two bailiffs run over and they're trying to restrain Van, and like all this shit's going down. And during it, you can see, I did see a news clip later with this in it, but I noticed this myself. I was really proud of myself. So during all of this shit, you can see for a split second while he's like just kind of, Michael Madison is just kind of trying to weasel away from like the chaos. He's smiling.
Wow.
And you can only see it for like a second as all the shit's going down. He's still smiling and like trying to get away from all of the chaos.
Wow.
And even like everything like calms down and everything. And there's this one really weird moment we'll have to figure out later. Maybe somebody else knows. But the judge, I think, she's like yelling in the microphone. But there's this dude, and like he's wearing like a red hat, like not like a beanie, but I don't know how to describe it. It's like this hat that has like a few different colors on it. But the top of it's red, and she's like screaming and like to like throw him out and like not allow him back in. But like all I can see is that like he has like car keys in his hand. So I don't know if he was like trying to do something where, you know, you put the thing like where you put car keys in between your knuckles.
I know what you're talking about.
But it doesn't. He's not doing that in the thing, but I don't know if like he was like he is holding a key up. I can see that.
If I end up telling the story of me getting jumped by 3 guys, that plays a part of it.
Yeah, but I don't know what was going on, but that's the only, and I couldn't like hear anything he was saying. So I don't know why he was getting thrown out, but like maybe it was just because he was involved. But it looked like he was just trying to restrain Van with the bailiffs and everything.
Okay.
So after all of that chaos, there's like papers all over the floor. Like all of the lawyers' shit is just like there's just shit everywhere.
The court stenographer.
They're like, we're going to recess, and then like that's actually where
the trial artists, their canvases are just laid everywhere.
No, there were pictures of all this. I don't know, why do you have to have an artist sometimes? And
that doesn't make any sense to me.
But there were pictures of all their trial. Well, there's video of this entire sentencing.
Well, I think some of the courtrooms don't allow cameras in.
Well, there's video of this entire sentencing, so there's no artists. But they're like, yeah, we're going to recess, and then the YouTube video cuts back into part 2, and you can watch like the actual sentencing and everything. But yeah, so Judge Nancy McDonnell, she's the judge of the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas, sentenced Michael Madison to death on June 2nd, 2016, and it was her first death sentencing in 21 years of service.
Wow.
That she had at the time. Wow. I don't know if she had any since then, but
I don't personally know how I feel about the death penalty. I'm of mixed opinions about that. However, if you live in a state that has a death penalty, that definitely sounds like somebody who is deserving of it.
And that's one of the things I thought about too, is that Ariel Castro, after all that he did, I mean, I don't want to say that's worse than murdering 3 women, but
yeah, that's not
it's
worse.
comparable. And he received life.
Yeah. I mean, those 3 women are incredibly traumatized, right, but they still get to live and get better.
I know, but it's still not the same to me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying I just don't.
My concern would be that a person like Ariel Castro would be like, well, whether I kill them or not, I'm going to get the same sentence.
Right.
So I might as well kill them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know. I just don't.
I understand. So what I wanted to say earlier was that I forget if it was do you remember if it was my Lyft ride on the way to the airport or on the way back from Gen Con?
It was where there. To
the airport.
In Cleveland.
So I'm in Cleveland and I'm riding Lyft to the airport and my cab driver and I start chatting and I forget how it comes up, but we end up talking about, because I think he was talking to me about living on the west side and he said he lives on the east side. And I mentioned that I have a podcast and that we were just talking about the east side. And I started talking about the Anthony Sowell murders. And he's like, oh, well, it's crazy that you bring that up. He's like, my buddy, his daughter was murdered by Michael Madison, who was inspired by Anthony Sowell.
So it's Van. So he's friends with Van then.
He's friends with Van. And he was like, and he's the guy who like tried to who leapt across the partition and like tried to like attack Michael Madison at the sentencing. So what's crazy to me is that we are living in Cleveland and we talk about Anthony Sowell and we have a friend who played on the street while those bodies are rotting and he could smell it. And then I get in a cab and my cab driver has a friend whose daughter was murdered by Michael Madison. And there are so many people whose lives are affected by these things that happen who are in our community.
Right.
And one of the things that you and I were talking about like our Patreon, for example, is like you and I are talking about potentially having a Patreon. And we talked about this in the 30 minutes that were deleted. But like we were like asking like, well, how can we make our Patreon interesting? Like what kind of like thing could we add there? And we were thinking it might be interesting that like if you're listening to this and you have something, some part of the story that you experienced that you want to share, or you have like your own like fucked up Cleveland story that you want to share with us, we were thinking that like maybe one of the perks of being a Patreon member would be that you can send us like a recording that's up to 3 minutes long and like we will consider putting it as a part of the show.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. It goes along the lines with me telling you before you moved here that, yeah, Cleveland's a big city, but it's also not huge.
Yeah.
Like where most big cities, you'd be lucky to find somebody that you can relate to something with socially.
Yeah.
With people. But here, we've already had, within less than a month's time, 2 people relating to something that, I mean, we're talking about or like know about or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's personal.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big city, but it's a very small community.
Right.
Yeah. Is that it for the Michael Madison story?
Yeah.
That's some compelling and some freaky shit.
I don't know. All that was happening once again, and I had no clue.
Yeah, while you were living here.
Yeah, it was just a few years ago.
Yep.
Okay, so now it's time for you to give me a recommendation.
Yeah, we're going to lighten the mood a little bit. So, I have purchased my new house. My house is amazing. It's really, really wonderful. I'm loving it so much. And I want to recommend, if you are looking to buy a house in the Lakewood or Cleveland area, there are 2 things that I would like to specifically recommend. First, the real estate agent Danielle Woike, Woike. She is a gem, a sweetheart. She is so much fun. She currently works with Howard Hanna, but who knows, maybe a year from now, 5 years from now, whenever you're listening to this podcast, if you were looking for a real estate agent, even if she is not still with Howard Hanna, I don't know where she'll be in the future, look her up. She is amazing. I highly recommend her. The other thing I would recommend is when I moved from my apartment to my house, I hired the Sit Back and Relax movers who I found from Yelp, and they were very affordable, very friendly.
And we did sit back and relax.
And we did sit back and relax. We just completely chilled while they moved my shit, took care of everything, and they were total fucking sweethearts. So if you're looking for a place to buy, contact Daniel Woike. If you're looking to move, contact Sit Back and Relax Movers. And tell them Jeff Goad sent you. I don't know why. It doesn't benefit me in any way.
They're not going to give you any money.
They're not giving me any money for it. But, I guess it's kind of cool to let them know that.
Sure.
That's my exciting recommendation. Oh, thank you. I just got a penny in the belly.
I did.
Okay. And you just got one in the boob.
You're a boob. Okay, so what I want to recommend is something that you've already watched and that we didn't get to watch today. It's a TV show called Who is America?
What's that?
Who is America? I don't even know how to categorize it, but it's made by Sacha Baron Cohen, so that's all the explanation you need. But it's more of a political focus than a lot of his other things.
And I will say, if you're in Lakewood, there's a really cute antique shop named Empty Nest, and there's a guy who works there named Sasha. It's not Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, that was Empty Nest?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the name of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sacha Baron Cohen does at least 6 or 7 or 8 characters that we've seen so far.
Okay.
And we're on episode 6 aired last night. We haven't watched that yet.
We have not.
But it's very political themed. It's very kind of scary if you're on our side of the political field, which I feel like if you're listening to this, you are. Not necessarily, but...
And by our side, we mean a staunch communist.
Yes. Yes, for Mother Russia. And it's just really... It's one of those things where I feel like we're going to look back in 20 years and people are going to make fun of us because... maybe not even 20 years, but maybe in 100 years, people are going to look back on us and make fun of us because of how blatantly ridiculous and out of control things are.
I think we're already making fun of ourselves for that.
I mean, we are, but think about it from a Nazi perspective, like how we look at situations where on some level you still can't believe how that happened. On some level you can't. Yeah. Even though you understand how it could happen, you haven't experienced it and you don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like the making fun of us happens now. 100 years from now, it's truly horrified by what has happened.
Yeah, I guess that's a better description.
Like right now, it's like you can't help but laugh, even though people are completely suffering.
Right.
Because of the absurdity of it all. But 100 years from now, those people can help but laugh because they're not probably specifically affected by it. And they can just be horrified of it in the way that you and I are horrified of the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. Not to say that this is the same as that. I know that people complain about the comparisons between the two because they are very different, but yes.
But are they?
But are they?
But yeah, just get Showtime or pirate it or whatever. But just watch Who is America just to feel something.
And I gotta hand it to Showtime. Who is America is amazing, and they also had Twin Peaks: The Return, which I've not specifically recommended yet, but however, I will say this very controversial statement. It is the single greatest piece of media I have ever experienced. Twin Peaks: The Return.
There's nothing controversial about that.
I think to make a statement that big is maybe not controversial, but it's a big statement.
No, Showtime is kicking it, but HBO has Game of Thrones.
Which you don't watch.
I know. Well, somebody told me to watch the first episode, and I was like, okay. And I watched the first episode, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not telling you, watch all of them.
No.
Hey, if it was so easy that one person telling you to watch the first episode worked, I'm going to say, just watch all of them.
No.
I'm going to make you watch them.
No.
Yes.
I'll watch it when it's over.
Boo.
A few years from now.
Oh. You haven't watched Buffy yet either, have you?
Ew, no.
You're the worst. Wait, so you don't even know if you're a Willow or Xander, do you?
I don't know what that means.
Or are you you're a Cordelia. You're totally a Cordelia.
You are.
You are such a Cordelia.
You're Xander. Okay, so actually, before we get into the end of it, don't forget to find our amazing Facebook group.
Yes.
And follow us on Twitter.
And when you are following us on Twitter or part of our amazing Facebook group.
Or Instagram,
recommend us stories. Talk about the stories we're telling. If there's stuff that we missed, please let us know about it. Like, this is stuff that we want to hear about and talk about. We want to have everybody kind of engaged in the stories, and we want to be a part of that conversation. So yeah, include us.
Yeah, and when you recommend stuff, don't feel like off-put if we're just like, oh yeah, okay, thanks. Because we legitimately, everything that has been recommended to us is in like our database.
Yes, I have a spreadsheet that literally has more than 200 potential topics. So a lot of the obvious ones, like, what about the torso killers? Or, here's Mitchell and I were hanging out with a buddy of ours the other day, and he's like, there's one that you guys might want to do. There's this guy, he killed a bunch of people. He grew up, I think, kind of like outside of Cleveland, and he's gay, and I think he like ate the people he murdered too.
And it's so dumb in hindsight, because I'm like, why is there this cannibal that we've never heard of?
Exactly. Then it turns out he's just talking about fucking Jeffrey Dahmer.
Don't recommend Jeffrey Dahmer. Don't recommend the torso murders. Don't recommend that the river caught on fire.
Sure. Those are on our list. All of those are on our list. The balloon disaster is on our list.
Yes.
Lots of things that are on our list. But please, like, I'm sure a lot of people recommend things that are already on our list, but just go ahead and recommend stuff anyways.
And it doesn't have to be murdered, but it does have to be fucked up.
As long as it's some kind of a fucked up story.
And if it's something that's not murder and it's legitimately fucked up, there's a chance that it's not already on our radar.
Yes.
So that's what I want.
Totally.
Like, I want, my favorite one that only one person has mentioned so far is the Blizzard of 77 or whatever. I haven't even looked into it yet, but I'm already like, yes. Because it's not something it's not murder. It's just like a random thing that was devastating and insane. So I'm really excited. I might do that for my next topic. Maybe.
Which reminds me that you also don't even know who I'm doing my episode on next week. So
we do one out.
We do.
This is one out, and we haven't talked about it, so I don't know.
So this is the first time that, because you brought up the Blizzard, it's still based on a person. We've not yet deviated from the person
category
from the person category yet.
But it's not murder.
But it's not. Well, what makes it different is this person. What happened in this story did not happen in Cleveland, but she lives in Cleveland now. I'm going to be talking about the story of Luong Ung. And Luong Ung, she lives here in Cleveland now, and she is a survivor of the Khmer Rouge Cambodian genocides.
Ooh.
And she lives here in Cleveland and is now a human rights activist and a lecturer, and she is the spokesperson for the Campaign for a Landmine-Free World.
How many of them are there?
I don't know. I imagine lots, because, I mean, it was a big country and lots of people were murdered. I haven't done the research yet.
Reasonably. Okay.
Oh, I don't know. But, I mean, I
just wanted a preview.
Well, the part of the preview is that I haven't really done my research yet. So if that's what you're looking to hammer home, yes, I have no information yet except for the fact that Luong Ung lives here in Cleveland presently.
Can we hang out?
Sure. We'll be like, hey, Luong, what's up? Let's kick it. Oh, and that reminds me.
What if that was our next episode? Oh my God.
Hanging out with Luong?
Yes.
Well, because also that reminded me, because our buddy who was on this street on Imperial Avenue while the bodies were rotting was like, if you guys want, I can be a guest on the show. And Samantha Echo, who we adore, was like, hey, I'd love to be a guest on the show. And I guess one thing I want to say theoretically is that, I'm on 2 other podcasts where almost every episode we have a guest. I kind of like the idea that, like, this podcast is just me and you.
Yeah, but I still like the idea of doing a recording So if somebody we know has something specific to say.
Oh, totally. It's like what we were saying about the Patreon or something.
Right.
Like, yeah, if somebody has something like awesome to say.
Regardless of that.
Oh, yeah.
You could just email us or whatever and be like, hey, I have something to say and I'm not subscribed. Listen. And if it's good enough, I'll be like, oh, yeah, we're putting this shit
If
on.
it's good enough, we'll be like, here's the link to our Patreon.
Give me all your money.
Exactly. We only want to hear from you if you're giving us $3 a month. No.
So speaking of, when we do get all that set up, maybe we'll hold an official thing and we'll just kind of wing it until now. But we do have our official sign-off phrase that was given to us by Michelle.
Because you did say in a previous episode.
I did. I think
the first person who gave us one, we would use it. I'm not going to say this is a great one.
No, but I think it's motivation for people to give us a good one because she wasn't being entirely serious.
And Mitchell also rejected mine earlier because we were inspired by My Favorite Murder.
And if Karen and Georgia are listening,
oh my God, we love you so much.
I'm dying.
Oh my God. Oh my God. But yes, so we love My Favorite Murder, and they like to end their episode with "Stay sexy, don't get murdered." I was saying maybe we'd end ours with like "Stay weird, don't get cleaved," but Mitchell was like, "No."
It's way too direct.
It's way too direct. It's a funny idea though. Stay weird, don't get cleaved.
If they didn't have that first, that would be 100%. But
yes, it's too direct.
So instead, the phrase that Michelle has given us for this episode is "suck it."
Yeah, suck it, Cleveland.
So thank you and good night, and you can suck it.
Consider it sucked. Bye.